Hi everyone, and welcome to day one of the holiday gnome adventure. We're going to start off with a canvas. I'm using a canvas sheet that is 8 inches by 8 inches. It is taped down to my work surface, and I've prepped it with a neutral color. I used an unbleached titanium mixed with a tiny bit of titanium white. If you want to get something similar to this and you don't have unbleached titanium, you can use titanium mixed with a tiny bit of burnt umber or even burnt sienna, or a combination of the two. Or you can go with a gray color, just anything neutral that won't conflict with the bright Christmassy, holiday-y colors we will be using here. We will be doing, of course, a gnome. This is day one of the 12 days of Christmas and day one of the holiday gnome adventure. So we're going to start off by working on a tree on the side. I'm going to have our little buddy Snowball McJingle trying to hang some ornaments on the tree. So we're going to start off on this side just doing the basics of a part of a tree. So remember, the gnomes are tiny, so you don't need to show the entire thing. So I'm just taking a round brush. This is a medium. Unfortunately, there's paint on the numbers, so I think it's a size 6 or 7, but I'm not sure. There's paint over it, so I can't see, but it's a medium-sized round brush, and I'm just dipping it in some plain phthalo green, and I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to push down and then just pull up. Push down and pull up. Push down, pull up, push down, pull up, and just keep doing that. You can use a bigger brush if you have a bigger canvas, whatever works best for you. And then I'm going to come up the row above it and do the same thing. And I'm going to continue this all the way up, maybe to about here on my canvas. And we will be layering. If this is the first time you've worked with acrylics or the first time you've watched any of my tutorials, acrylics work best when you layer over and over again. It just gives it dimension and interest. So I think I'm actually going to widen this down here a little bit so I can go a little further up the canvas here. Okay. So I'm going to let this dry for a minute before we get going here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make it even wider because I want Snowball to be kind of in the middle here. So we're going to come out maybe to there. Kind of keep widening it until I get it how I want it. And again, this part doesn't have to look perfect because we will be layering over it. We're just getting a base down for our tree. And I'm coming in and adding some texture on the sides as I do this because it was looking a bit too perfectly triangular for my liking. Okay, maybe a smidge wider along here. Yeah, okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry for a minute. We are gonna have a little ladder here that our Snowball is going to be climbing up so that he can reach where to put the ornaments on this adorable tree here. Okay, so we have the base of our tree. I'm going to mix another green color. This time I'm using the phthalo green and a little bit of a cadmium or a cadmium free yellow. You could also use a Hansa yellow, or if you're using craft paints, you could use just bright yellow, primary yellow, anything you have access to. And I'm just going to repeat, and it doesn't matter if you hit the exact same location with your brush, because trees have texture. We're just going to keep doing this. And again, we'll do some more layers. But we're just kind of adding some more depth right now with this additional color here. And if it's blending a little bit, that's no problem. The undercoat may still be a smidge wet in places. Again, not a problem. You do not have to paint as fast as I am. Feel free to pause and go at your own pace. And restart when you're ready. Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of that plain green again and just come in and add a little bit of texture here and there. You can do thin marks, thick marks. You can do what's called impasto, where you do really thick globs of paint and it dries with the texture. You can do whatever you want. This is your painting. Be happy with it. If you don't want your tree to be so dark, feel free to mix a little bit of the green with some white, or the green and yellow mixture with some white. But I think I'm happy with this. So I am going to let this dry because I do have some thicker blobs of paint here, and I'm going to be using a ruler and I don't want to smudge that. Okay, so now I'm going to take a pencil. If you have a darker color, you can use chalk or charcoal pencil, or if you have dark chalk, you can use it. I love these General's charcoal white pencils. They are great for drawing. It will be too light for you to see if I use this to draw, so I am going to use a pencil. This is just a mechanical pencil. My husband gave me, I guess it's some fancy architecture pencil, but it works really well. So we're going to draw a bit of a ladder here for our dear friend Snowball McJingle to get up onto the tree. So this will be the side closest to us, and then the other side will be kind of like right here. Okay. So this is going to be kind of dimensional. So let's see. It's going. So these measurements do not have to be exact. Just drawing some lines here for rungs for little Mr. Snowball to climb up. I am a big proponent of not being exact with painting because I want this to be fun and you know, you're not having to stress over particulars. Okay, so now we're gonna draw Snowball. So I want his head to be right about here. So we're gonna start with his little hat. Okay. If you are not comfortable drawing, feel free to use the traceable. Okay. So I'm just doing a little puffball there. That is totally optional. Okay. And here we go. Okay, so I've got this little hat. As we all know, our Gnome friends have very long hair. So there's his nose, his hair coming off of it. And I'm gonna have a little foot, maybe propped right about here on the ladder to show that he's balancing. And you can correct any drawing mistakes you might make while you're painting. And then I'm going to have a little arm coming out. This will be hard to see on here, but a little arm reaching out here. And we'll do an ornament while we're painting. Okay, so I've got one little foot, gnome hair. I have gnome hair coming off the back too, and his little arm. I think over here I want to do some presents, so I'm just gonna do just a little box here to guide me. Oops. Oh well, I'll cover that with paint. I must have had some damp paint over here. So we'll make the bow right here on the box, so that it then looks like it's coming off of the canvas here. The package is coming off of the canvas. Okay, and then maybe another one behind it that might be taller and thinner. So if you noticed on the supply list, we're using pretty simple colors, just reds and greens. And of course some other, like, you know, brown and black and white, because I didn't want to do too much. I didn't want to get into too many colors. This is a beginner class, so I didn't want to go bonkers with color. And we'll be doing some fun details with the hat and everything to make it a bit more fun. So I'm going to take a thin brush here. This is a liner brush. If you don't have a liner brush, you can just use a really thin round brush and just use just the very tip. And I'm going to come in with some burnt umber, which is a dark brown color. And I'm just going to come in and do the lines on my ladder here. I'm using some glazing medium or glazing liquid. I like this to thin out my paints when I'm using a liner brush. Typically when you're using a liner brush, you want the paint to be an inky consistency, and water over time can tend to break down the quality of the paint. whereas the glazing liquid is more, it is made out of acrylic, so it is not going to break it down. So I like the look of ladders being a bit rustic, especially for these gnome people. If you would prefer a straighter line, please feel free to use your ruler to work on this. But that is your choice. Probably didn't need to do that one because the arm will be over it, but okay. Okay. So the fun part is the hat here. So this hat, and it's going to tie in with what my dear friend Hillary Growth is doing with day 2, and that is the gnome just kind of popping out of the canvas. So I mixed a little bit of the phthalo green with just some plain black, and I'm going to come here. It looks very dark, but it will make sense when you see tomorrow. I'm going to switch to my round brush to make it a bit easier to control. Okay. Again, use whatever brush you have on hand. Don't need to go crazy trying to look for different supplies or brushes that you don't already have in stock or on hand. This doesn't need to be expensive. This is just for fun. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush, and just over that, I'm going to take some more green and mix with that yellow to give us that bright green color. And I'm going to do a stripe of that. Okay. Then right above that, I'm taking some alizarin crimson. If you don't have alizarin crimson, you can use a deep red color or even a regular bright red color that you would find at the craft store. Cadmium red will work fine. It's just a more warm toned red than this, but it will definitely work. Whatever you have on hand. Now I'm just going to do a white stripe. That red is a little transparent, so I will probably be going over it again just to deepen it up a bit. I'm going to come back to this yellowy green and do another stripe. This time a little bit thicker. You'll see why in just a minute, or when we progress. I'm now going to come back in with another red stripe. Okay. And then another white stripe. Okay. Now I'm going to come in with that deep green again. That black mixed with the green. little tiny touch of my glazing liquid to make that a bit easier to work with. Now I'm being a little careful here because, as you can see, I've got a bend in the hat, so that'll be kind of where the design is going to shift. So we're going to be careful with that here for in a minute. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush, get some white, and do another white stripe just above that. And now I'm going to come in with a different green. This time I'm going to use just the plain green. I'm going to add just a tiniest bit of white to kind of thicken it up a bit because the plain green is really transparent. And I'm going to come in here and just go all the way to the top and then have that bend down. Okay. Maybe make that a little bit thicker. I might have some of that white bend there a little bit too. Okay, I'll fix that in a minute. And then I'm going to come in with another white stripe there. Kind of bring that around a bit. Another yellow-green stripe. Okay. Another white stripe. And then the very last one is going to be more, let me clean that brush, going to be more of that crimson color all the way to the tip there. And again, with some of these, you know, I need a second coat. So I'm going to come in and do second coat with the crimson again here. This yellow-green could probably use another coat. You see, I'm not being too particular that my lines are all straight or anything. I am just having fun with color here. Okay, clean. And I'm going to come in with the white and do my white lines again. Just to clean them up just a tiny bit. Okay, and that last little bit of crimson is dry, so I can do a second coat there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of accents to the hat. I am going to switch to my liner brush. If you don't have a liner brush, use your round brush, and these accents are going to be in white. So I'm going to do a few polka dots on a couple of the rows. This is totally optional. You can skip this part or not. If you want to do stars, do stars. And again, this will all tie in when you see what Hillary is doing on the next video. I will say, if you are not able to find the same fabric that she is using, feel free to copy the pattern from whatever fabric you are using onto your little hat instead of doing this. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over my plain green color again, just to make it less streaky. And I'm going to take my red and do red circles on there. Okay. I'll go back over my white dots here. And again, I'm not worrying about perfection. If they're a little wonky, it just kind of adds to the whimsy of the whole piece. I'm gonna do his little puff ball here. This I'm really not worrying about being exactly circular. It could be fuzzy, it could be poofy, however you want it to look. Okay. And I think, just because he's a little bit cartoony, I'm gonna take some black and just kind of gently outline just the edge of the hat. I'm not gonna do it for the whole gnome, but I think just the edge of the hat, just to kind of crisp it up a little bit. There we go. Cute. Okay. I see some of my white got a little muddied here in between, so I'm going to come back in and just make that stripe better. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that's good and dry before I move on to the next piece, and we will get to working on more of Snowball. Okay, we're going to work on Snowball's hair now, and Snowball has gray hair. It is accomplished by layering white and black, or really a deep gray. So what we're going to do first is just come through just with white, and we're just going to fill in the hair, the area where the hair is. Okay. I'm just being careful not to get his nose, because we are going to do that here in a little bit. Okay, so I am having his hair come a bit over the tree here, and I'm making sure to watch out for where his arm is going to come in. And of course I'm being careful of the ladder. You know that saying, they say hindsight is 20/20. I probably should have done the ladder last, but we can touch it up after. And that's what we're gonna have to do, because it's almost impossible to be super duper careful here with this ladder. I'm being as careful as I can, but I'm not too concerned, because like I said, I can go back over it. Okay, so we've got our hair sort of lined up. Okay, so now we have where we want our hair. So now I'm going to come in and do his sleeve. And I think to make this simple, I am going to just do some red to make it stand out, and maybe a very light green glove. So I'm going to start off, actually, I'm going to start off with white, because I want it to stand out some here. And the red is so transparent, I really need the white under it to make it pop. And then we'll need a little bit of a glove here. So finger and then glove. Okay. So we'll let that dry a bit. So while that's drying, I'll come over here to our present. And you can make these presents whatever colors you want. You don't have to stick with the colors that I have. I think I'm gonna make one of them a light yellow color, because I have all this yellow here. And I still have a tiny bit of green in my brush, then that's okay. Ooh, flyaway brush. So you see, I'm not being too careful with the edges. I'm not too concerned, but I do always at the end go and clean up my edges some, just because I do like the finished product to be a bit cleaned up. I think a blue present might look really nice. I just didn't list that as one of the suggested colors, but that does not mean you can't use it. Okay. And I think the ribbon for this is going to be maybe, Maybe green, since we have a splotch of green on there. Or I have a splotch of green. I'll do this pretty light green color. I will take my liner brush in a bit and clean up the edges some. Kind of outline this. A bit, maybe with a darker green, just to add a smidge of contrast. Totally optional. If you're not comfortable doing this, then by all means, oops, don't do this part. And that got a little wonky because I had too much water left in my brush from cleaning it, so I'll go back over. In a minute and clean that up. Now again, this is, you know, a little cartoony because I don't want to take away from Snowball. I don't want to take away from his little detail and enjoyment. I've taught other classes where Snowball is made a bit more realistic, but this one is just fun, and it is all about basic technique and having fun with color. Okay. And I will go fix those lines that I messed up a bit. This just doesn't want to work, so I may have to fix this at the very end. But you get the idea. Okay. And then the package in the background, I think I'm just going to go with maybe a red color. And you notice this one doesn't have a bow, so I don't have to be too worried about that. Except going around this bow and this package. And as I mentioned, you know, the red is a bit transparent, so it might need a second coat. That's okay. I'm just going to take my liner brush and fix this so that it goes right up to behind the bow. Okay, the arm is done. So I'm going to come in, or dry I should say. I'm going to come in with my paint, my red paint, and come in, whoops, and do our little arm here in red. And again, we'll need a second coat, but that's okay. Now to make a light green for the glove, I think I'm going to go with that yellowy green, and then add a touch of white to it. So that it stands out a bit up against that tree. And just come in and do the mitten or glove, whatever you want to call it. Okay. I'll come in with more red for a second coat on the sleeve, and then we can resume with the beard. And I think this might even need a third coat, so depending on your brand, you may need a third coat. You notice I haven't done the shoe yet. I'm going to do that last because I do want it sticking out. So, all right, so now I've got the white down. I'm going to come back with another coat of white. Oh, I have some red in my brush. Okay. Come in with white, another coat of white, and I'm not worrying about how thick it is at this point because we're going to blend what's called wet on wet here with some gray to really get some texture in the hair. Okay, so now I'm going to mix a gray color. I'm just taking some black, Mars black, ivory black, whatever black you have, and mixing with the white. And I'm just coming through and just doing strokes. It's going to look really ugly at first, but as we blend more and more, it's going to come together. So you're just doing strokes in the direction that the hair goes. You hear a lot of creaking and squeaking. That is the floor above me. My studio is in my basement and my husband was walking around. So now I'm just, without cleaning my brush, coming back in with some white, and I'm doing the same thing. Okay, I'm just coming through, and you see it starts looking like layers of hair here. And just come around that nose. And this is another situation because of the texture. You could easily do what I called impasto. Whoops, I got some green in there. Impasto on here. If you want it to look thick and textured, feel free to do that with the hair. But I'm just gonna stick with this. But what I might do is add a little interest with a few wisps here and there. So you will continue to layer your colors like this until you are happy with the texture that you have accomplished. And I think I'm pretty happy with how that looks. I might come in with a little bit of white to cover up some of this gray splotchiness that I did here. But I am pretty happy with the flow of his hair here. He's got some gorgeous long locks, don't you think? Okay. Just coming through a bit more here and refining. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with his hair. So I'm rinsing my brush. Let me pull out a smaller round brush. I'm gonna do his little round nose here. And his nose is a pink color. So I've got some quinacridone magenta, which you can just use whatever red you happen to have. And I'm mixing with quite a bit of white until I get a light pinkish color. And then I'm just going to come in and do his little nose here. Okay. I think now's a good time to come back and do that third coat on the arm. There we go. That's better. Looks kind of velvety almost because of the texture of this paint. And I'm just gonna roll with it here. You can do some poofs on the cuff if you want it to look like, you know, that fuzzy white trim that some winter coats have, especially like a Santa coat. So I actually might do that right now. Just come in and just add some fluff. I'm just dotting with my brush here. This is just optional. Okay. Now I think I'm going to do his foot. I'm just going to do black for his foot. Nothing fancy. We've got the black here, so why not? And I'm just going to have his foot right here. Poking out and balancing on this little ladder here. Okay. And we need to give him an ornament. So I think I might try to do a gold ornament. So gold is pretty much just yellow and brown mixed together. So that's what I'm doing, is yellow and brown. And then we'll add a little highlight. So I'm going to make a circle and just fill it in. And to really make it look like gold, we'll add some plain yellow highlights ever so often. and just kind of blend a little bit there. And then you'll want just a couple stark white highlights on it. So it looks a little bit like gold. I may add a bit more plain yellow on here. Metallics are a pretty advanced technique, so this is something fun to do here. Just blending a bit. There we go. And then we want our little hook. So we'll have the hook going up towards his hand. Okay. All right. Now, our next to last step is to go back over the ladder lines. Again, you can use a ruler. You can use a thicker brush. You can do whatever you want for this thing. But I like it looking a little bit rustic for my Gnome little buddy here. That perception on the ladder is a little hard to grasp. It looks a little off and I can't figure out why, but this is all in fun, so I'm not overly concerned. Okay. All right, so now I'm just gonna sign my name. I think I'm gonna use some of that gold color I made just because I have it. You can sign wherever you want. And I might add a touch of yellow to it just to make it pop. Okay. And then, oops, I forgot to do my second coat. See, I always forget to do something until the very end. My second coat on this box. And again, it has that kind of velvety texture, which is kind of cool. Maybe it's a fancy gift wrapped in some velvet cloth. Okay. And there you have Snowball McJingle decorating his Christmas tree or holiday tree. Okay, so as I was doing a bit of cleanup on the edges, I decided that I needed some more outlining on him to really make him pop because it just was not looking how I wanted. So I just took my liner brush. You can again use your thin round brush and just use black and just went around the edges to give a little bit of movement. I came in and did a few swirls here and there, outlined his nose, the puffball on his hat, and the fluff on his sleeve here, just to really make it pop a bit more. I just felt like it was lacking. So now I'm coming in on the tree, and I wanted to show you how I'm doing this. So I'm coming through and just every once in a while just adding just a touch of a little bit of texture here. I'm just doing like a U shape along it, and I'm not being super careful with the edges. I'm just coming in and adding a bit of texture, as I said. Coming in, going around some of these lines, and in other places just making up a space. And it just is kind of making it pop a bit more for my liking. This is, again, like everything else, optional. I just felt it needed a little more oomph. So that's why I came in and did this. So feel free. You see I also did the presents over here. And I may do the bow here. I'm not sure. Let me see. Do I think it needs it? Let's see. Let's test it. Yeah. I'm going to come in and just get that inky consistency. And just come down. And since it's not taped anymore, I can move it around if I need to get an easier angle. So I'm going to do that here with the bow so I can come at it from a better angle. All right, there we go. I think he pops a bit more now. It does mean that our little hook doesn't stand out as much. So I may come in just with a tiny bit of a white highlight on that, just to make it stand out. And there we go. Snowball Make Jingle.